welcome to Tales of Honor Podcast, a podcast dedicated to telling the true stories of the Congressional Medal of Honor. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Tales of Honor Podcast. I'm your host, Christoph Ambrosch, and this week's episode is episode 49, and it is going to go back to World War II again. Back to the South Pacific once again, which is interesting because I think most people, when you hear the phrase World War II, most people automatically think of the European front. I think a lot of people end up forgetting about the South Pacific and Japan and the islands around there. So I'm glad that these stories are being told. I'm learning a little bit throughout these processes as well, and I hope you are too. And it's being brought to you tonight by my good friends over at Sunrise Linens. This week, you probably saw me put up a picture of the egg collecting aprons that I ordered from them, and I actually have them right here on the table next to me, and they're really nice. My girls absolutely love them, and they're handmade, quality items, and I think they're made well enough that I think they'll take a lot of abuse from my 5 and 7-year-old. They're not the most careful as most 5 and 7-year-olds are, but I think these will last for a very, very long time, and they'll get some good use, so I appreciate that. And you can find all their stuff, just like I did, over at etsy.com/shop/sunriselinens. And look, all their stuff is handmade, quality items. They're right here in the U.S., and it's a vintage vibe clothing business. Simple as that. If you go over, like I did, and once you're done shopping, put the promo code TOH25 in that little promo section there. You'll get 25% off your order. Please be sure to follow them on Facebook and Instagram. And what it does is it lets you know when a new item is coming out. I know they're gearing up for Christmas season and in the winter season, so that's where all the new items are going to pop up. Sunrise Linens for nostalgia and wandering. And now, a tale of honor. William J. O'Brien was born in 1899 in Troy, New York, and joined the U.S. Army. By the 20th of June, 1944, William was a lieutenant colonel with the 1st Battalion, 105th Infantry Regiment, 27th Infantry Division, and was in the Marianas Islands when he would be a part of several attacks, which included American tanks that were firing on their own troops unknowingly, and an attack on a Japanese-held ridge. It was his actions on the 7th of July, however, that would earn him the Medal of Honor. The citation reads, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty at Saipan, Marianas Islands from 20 June through 7 July 1944. When assault elements of his platoon were held up by intense enemy fire, Lieutenant Colonel O'Brien ordered 3 tanks to precede the assault companies in an attempt to knock out the strongpoint. Due to direct enemy fire, the tanks' turrets were closed, causing the tanks to lose direction and to fire into our own troops. Lieutenant Colonel O'Brien, with complete disregard for his own safety, dashed into full view of the enemy and ran to the leader's tank and pounded on the tank with his pistol butt to attract 2 of the tank's crew, and mounting the tank fully exposed to enemy fire, Lieutenant Colonel O'Brien personally directed the assault until the enemy strongpoint had been liquidated. On 28 June 1944, while his platoon was attempting to take a bitterly defended high ridge in the vicinity of Denay, Lieutenant Colonel O'Brien arranged to capture the ridge by a double envelopment movement of 2 large combat battalions. He personally took control of the maneuver. Lieutenant Colonel O'Brien crossed 1,200 yards of sniper-infested underbrush alone to arrive at a point where one of his platoons was being held up by the enemy. Leaving some men to contain the enemy, he personally led 4 men into a narrow ravine behind and killed or drove off all the Japanese manning that strong point. In this action, he captured 5 machine guns and 1 70mm field piece. Lieutenant Colonel O'Brien then organized the 2 platoons for night defense and against repeated counterattacks directed them. Meanwhile, he managed to hold ground. On 7 July 1944, his battalion and another battalion were attacked by an overwhelming enemy force estimated at between 3,000 and 5,000 Japanese. With bloody hand-to-hand fighting in progress everywhere, their forward positions were finally overrun by the sheer weight of the enemy numbers. With many casualties and ammunition running low, Lieutenant Colonel O'Brien refused to leave the front lines. Striding up and down the lines, he fired at the enemy with a pistol in each hand, and his presence there bolstered the spirits of the men, encouraged them in their fight, and sustained them in their heroic stand. Even after he was seriously wounded, Lieutenant Colonel O'Brien refused to be evacuated, and after his pistol ammunition was exhausted, he manned a .50 caliber machine gun, mounted on a jeep, and continued firing. When last seen alive, he was standing upright firing into the Jap hordes that were then enveloping him. Sometime later, his body was found surrounded by enemy he had killed. His valor was consistent with the highest traditions of the service. William was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor on the 9th of May, 1945. A U.S. Army ship was named in William's honor, and in 2009, a memorial in the Rensselaer County Office Building was revealed and also included the names of 2 other Troy natives that had also served in the 105th, Major General Ogden Ross and Sergeant Thomas Baker. Thomas Baker had also been posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. William J. O'Brien is buried at St. Peter's Cemetery in Troy, New York. And that was a Tale of Honor. Thank you so much for listening to Tales of Honor podcast. And if you like this podcast, please be sure to leave a nice review, a good rating, tell a friend, and be sure to support our show sponsors as well too. They help keep this podcast going, and for that, we're much appreciative. You can see more information on Facebook, Instagram, and at talesofhonorpodcast.com. If you have any questions or comments, you can send them to talesofhonorpodcast@gmail.com. And until next time, I'm Christoph Ambrosch. Thanks for listening.